We're gonna get more 4coder Friday going. So give me a sec to look around here. The brightness of the room has changed, so I'm gonna switch to higher contrast. Yeah, the next big thing I want to do is right now, when I look at this, it uses a single coroutine based loop to run the switch list. So to demonstrate what that means, I won't go into all the details about what that means, but what it means is if I pull up my switch list and then I click off, it'll automatically close, which means there's no way to pull up the switch list and then switch over to this panel and pull up the file list or something, which is sometimes a useful thing to be able to do. Not very often, but sometimes. Also, it means you can't scroll through the file you're looking at on one side and bring the switch up over here. And by contrast, or to contrast, you can see that the current version of 4coder, 4028, this works, and this has pretty much always worked because these lists aren't treated as a state that is dependent on an ongoing command, right? This isn't a command that's running. This is a mode the view has been placed in, right? And right now, in the new version, a single command is trying to completely control that switch list. And so, since it's a single command, if I change views, the in-flight command gets killed. Which means, in order to really make this work, I have to introduce a kind of view mode system that places the view into a mode that still takes commands on the command map and stuff. So, what we're going to do is first let's go to base commands and look for interactive switch buffer. Yeah, interactive switch buffer is gone completely. And when I go over here to lists, we're now going to try to write the real version of this with a mode instead of with a command coroutine loop. Right? And then we're going to go to metagen dummy API exploration. Okay, so that's gone. There we go. And another thing we're going to need to do is if we go over here to the framework, alright, we're going to have a default lister map, which is the map that controls the lister. I'm going to call it lister UI map. Let me pull up my Twitch chat, by the way, see if there's anyone there. Probably isn't, because I didn't warn anyone when I was getting on. I just jumped into the stream and started streaming. Which means that what I should probably do is do a quick tweet to let everyone know that we're back. How should I put this? Hey, Delix, Flying Solomon. You guys were here. Alright, so this is where things get tricky. So when we switch buffer, what we're going to end up doing is beginning a command map. So we need to go view summary view equals get active view. Uh-oh, I've just detected a big problem. Alright, so we're going to have to get even more creative because the API is all messed up in the way it assigns command maps to buffers and views and things. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to grab the view start UI mode, and when we start the UI mode, we're going to be able to say view set UI command map. View, or I don't know, I have view set setting. Let's go look at the API implementation. View set setting. Let's look at the API. Set setting. That'll actually work. View setting UI command map. Default lister UI map. Okay, so there we go. So we need to go track down view setting. We're going to want to document this right away because it won't produce a warning if I forget to document it, since it's just a value and not a full type definition. The view setting UI command map setting. Why do I say that on all of these? Well, why don't I just start with determines whether the view determines whether the view determines what command map the view uses when it is in UI mode. I need to look at view start UI mode. Interesting. So one problem is, what if I set it into interactive mode and then I hit, if I do this and then this, you can see it changes what list I'm looking at. Really, we want to close the previous list and start the new one, but how am I supposed to do that? Somewhere along the way there has to be a detect current UI and shut down. But what if I want to be able to invoke one of these as a subpart of another one of these? What's the whole point of saying view start UI mode as a counter if I can't do that? Decide whether to shut down. And then if I'm going to start a new UI mode inside of an existing UI mode, okay, I've got it. I know what we'll do. There we go. So for now, we're just going to say that although these are set up as counters in the implementation, what we really want users to do is to only have one app in at a time. They're not supposed to be stacked. The only reason that it's set up this way is so that we can make it stacked later when we determine that that's a good idea. Hey, yeah, I actually have gotten a handle on Direct right now. I don't know what will happen to the code I'm working on. I mean, it's up to Rad and Jeff and stuff what exactly we do with it. But there was one mention of possibly taking the core portion that does the direct write rasterizing and letting Sean drop that into an STB file or something. So it might be that all my direct write work will end up just becoming some free library that you can get somewhere. We'll see. I don't really want to get into it right now because it's a huge pain in the ass. Like, you have to start direct write just giving up on things looking nice, but then there's a difference between things looking nice, like things looking messed up along one axis versus like how many. It's not about how messed up things will be, it's about along how many different axes will things be messed up. And luckily I was able to get all the way down to I don't have any dependencies besides direct write. I don't depend on direct2d or direct3d. I don't have any I don't have any overriding virtual base classes to do in the system I have set up now. Like, I've boiled it down to the absolutely bare minimum that you can, given that you still have to go through the crazy API that you have to go through for most of it. So really the only thing that sucks about it is that it's a lot of code that is very hard to reason about. But it doesn't have like dependency problems or anything like that anymore. Or like out of order execution type stuff. Callbacks. All that's been eliminated. So it's just dense code. Alright, so view set setting. It's somewhat ironic that Windows names all those APIs with direct something, like direct sound, direct write, direct 2D, direct 3D, because they're very indirect in the sense that everything you do it through an interface pointer or something. Like, it should be called indirect write. I mean, there's plenty of indirection happening. I know that for sure. Alright, we need to go to view.h and look at the transient portion. Okay. Yeah, so right here we're going to put in a command map. Do I have a command map ID thing? Or, let me go to the file real quick and look what it uses for its map. Base map ID is just an I32. Okay. And so now what we need to do is go in here. Oh wait, I also need to, before I do anything else, go to get view setting. Value out equals, there we go. Now I want to go to Alright, so Delix says that wasabi is bananas, and he gives a list of why it's bananas, and I have to respond. So he says you need an iDevice enumerator, which gets you an iDevice. Yes, that's a very common thing in the COM world. You have a something enumerator, which lets you one at a time return the somethings, and then he says which you can use to get an iAudio client, which is just some other thing, you know, which then gives you an iAudio render client, great, which then you can maybe do some stuff with. And that's kind of nothing. I mean, that's what you just said there is obviously horrible, but it sounds like that's for the setup, like to get the thing to which you will finally send some of the data. With direct write, one of the things you end up having to do is it doesn't let you, I mean, it gives you an easy way where you can take a file name and say, like, here, use this file name as a font and like go with it. And that's great. You need that. But it won't, once you've done that, let you ask something like, what family is this font a part of? Even though most fonts have some way to encode that, and they have some way to extract it, they just, you have to, the only API that exposes that information for a font created from a raw file is Windows 10 only. You have to use DirectWrite 3 or higher. So, if you want to get the family out of a font, what you have to do is you have to use what's called a font collection. A font collection allows you to query it for a font family. A font family allows you to get a font list. A font list allows you to enumerate fonts. With a font, you can get what's called a font file and a font face. You need both of those. The font face is for doing things like rendering and getting metrics. The font file is for figuring out the path to that file name, so that, because eventually what my system needs to be able to do is know the file name of the font that it's dealing with and the metrics for that font. So the font face, from there you can call a get metrics thing and you're done with that. But with font file, if you want to get the actual name of the file from that, the problem is that can represent files that aren't local, who don't have file names. So how do you get the file name out of it? Well, you can query it for its file loader. Once you have its file loader, you can I think you query interface the file loader for a local file loader, which means get me a file loader, but only return this interface if this is actually an instance of this particular interface and not a different type of thing. So if it is a local file, you'll get your local file loader pointer. Now, you think you can get your file name now, but you can't, because now you have to go back to your font file, ask for a thing called a reference key, which is a variable-sized void pointer that it gives to you. So you have to pass into that thing that gives you the reference key an address to a void pointer and an address to a size. You can then take those two pieces of information and pass that into the client the file loader, and it will return to you a string, an I string thing. What was it exactly? ID write. I think it was just localized file or something like that, and then you can query that thing for the length of the string and to fill your buffer with the string finally. Anyway, that was my day yesterday, so I'm pretty sure that I remembered all the steps. Okay, so with the command map stuff set up, now what we need to do is we need to actually, when we're querying for a command map to send commands to, command, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this, but command.cpp is my favorite file in all of 4coder. It's a very short file, but something about it, I'm always excited when I find myself going to command.cpp all the time, and I think I like the idea that there's 200 lines of code that really describes a lot of the a very core idea to 4coder, which is how we map input events to commands. If you think about it, everything else that exists is just taking advantage of the fact that that's possible. It's finding fun things to do once your input has turned into an event, into like a command event. Alright, map, extract, recursive. Okay. Mapping, map. Okay, so that's sending to the command coroutine. It does not matter. Wait, yes it does. Map equals view transient map. I don't like that. Hold on. Map. Yeah, you're gone, friend. You're gone. View.cpp. We'll just add a way to return that. Well, this sure is a stupid feature that 4coder has held on to for a while. Man, I did not know how to code a couple years ago. Like, why would the view have its own map ID and the file have its own map ID? I really don't know what I was thinking. Okay, so I think that should do it. This right here was the line of code we wanted to get around to getting correct. So that now we are extracting the map from the correct view. And the view is either going to look at its UI map or its main map appropriately. So, that's good. We do need to think about that thing we just added the to-do for. Make sure I don't forget that. So let me make a note of that. Quit UI events. Interesting. Let's see, what else is going on? So, I'm still thinking about that quit UI event thing. It's going to be a little bit tricky, but not horrible. Really what 4coder ends up needing is like an arena for each view, I think. Like right now I have one major scratch arena for everything, and I think if I instead had scratch arenas that were per view, that it would make a lot of sense. I could even make coroutines per view, and then some interesting stuff would happen. The only reason I haven't done that is because the arenas aren't per view. If I had one coroutine for each view and let that coroutine handle the commands in that view, then we wouldn't actually have to do anything differently now for the listing thing. Right? So basically what's happening is right now, this right here works completely, except that when you click off of it, it shuts down. That wouldn't be necessary if each view could run its own commands, but when I first designed this, I didn't want that because I figured if one of them is in the middle of like pushing memory onto the global partition, here, this global arena, then another one comes and does that, and then they start freeing and pushing in like sequence. They could easily interfere with each other just all the time and create all kinds of bugs. So I said only one of them is allowed to exist at a time. If the user was forced to be more careful and not use global variables somehow, or at least not use global variables that would overlap, that would contradict each other in that kind of way, then we would get a lot of even more leverage out of this coroutine system for one thing. and we wouldn't have to do what we're doing now, which is introducing these modes and whatnot. It's a compelling thought, but it sure is bug prone, because all it takes is one person not understanding the coroutine system and trampling over some shared stuff that's shared between two different coroutines, and man, basically the problem is it forces the users to think of their custom layer as a parallel program. I wouldn't mind writing in that environment, but I don't want to force the users to conceptualize themselves as having multiple threads right off the bat, as writing this sort of parallel state machine thing that goes through running only one of their threads at a time, so that there's no like race conditions, but there are like all kinds of out of orderedness that can be introduced as soon as the user switches views. But man, it sure would let you interoperate a lot of interesting stuff, because you could have a really complicated list on both sides that both tweak information that the other one then reads. Like, it'd be great for a debugger, for instance, because you could have a list over here that's like your watch window or something. Like, it'd be like table view or whatever. And then, that could be split like this, and have over here your call stack and breakpoints, and then your code, right? And then a command here that goes F10 would also be able to interoperate with these things by saying, I've just updated a global variable for the system, for the debug system. Change, this needs to change over here now, and possibly the call stack needs to change. And so then when it hits F10 there, it would be responsible for sending sort of a signal to all of the views to wake them up and update their state. It's very old school object orientation, in fact. I would treat each view as a thing that I can send signals to, and it sits there in a loop all the time. I don't know. I feel like the new version of 4coder will do that, but I'm not quite ready to make that big of a change right now. A lot of people are used to the way 4coder already works. Yeah, people are already really accustomed to the current system. I don't think I'm willing to. I've always planned on reevaluating this more carefully when we reach 4.1.0. Like, that'll be a big change, and I'll probably go ahead and go multi-coroutine then. Yeah, agreed. It would require careful documentation. It would also just require a deep rewrite, because look at how many times global park gets referenced. 78. So all of these would have to go. Not a single one of these would be correct anymore. And so I'd have 78 things to go and figure out the right way to do it. Now, it's probably pretty easy. It's probably like get arena, view get arena, right? And now we have the arena for that particular view, and if we just did that everywhere, it's good, as long as everything has an access to its view summary. Everything else would pretty much work besides that, I think. I don't know. A global arena just would never work. Not even for shared stuff. Because unless you're making a push never pop arena, like if you're saying allocate things you never ever free, maybe, but you couldn't ever allocate something onto your global arena and then count on the fact that you're in charge of freeing that, because it might be that someone else out of order from you has also pushed something and put a mark before your memory, right? Let me pull up Milton to show you why you can't have a global arena. Alright, I don't know. I feel like you can't, like, the only way you could possibly have a global arena is if you didn't ever yield it when you took it. You can't take an arena, yield, and then later wake out of that yield and end the temporary block inside the arena unless unless you guarantee that no other code path is going to touch the arena for the entirety of that yield, which you can't do if you can have more than one coroutine. Yeah, each view arena will be separately allocated, sort of automatically growing allocation space assigned to that view. This has a whole bunch of advantages. For instance, if you close the view, it'll kill all the memory that you've allocated on it, right? If you, in fact, that's probably a good idea anyway. I should probably get to the point where everything has in it a sort of kernel object that's the thing onto which you put memory, and then when you kill something, it and all the things that have been allocated on it get freed automatically. That way you could do stuff like, when you split this view, you do some stuff, and then you have a command over here that drops you down to one view without knowing what the other views it just killed were. It would still be able to free them properly. Something like that. I think we will end up wanting to do sooner or later too. Okay. For now, we're going to march ahead with the complicated version and see how bad it is. If it's not that bad, maybe then we won't even worry about all this. But if it is bad, then it's something to think about. It's an idea to think about bringing back. Okay, so default list or UI map. Yeah, so the next thing we need to do is define all of the commands that go into the default list or UI map, and then we'll see. So what do I gotta do? What do I gotta do? View set buffer. What am I thinking about? What is next? So it sets UI mode. View set setting for the list or UI map. And then we have put it into switch buffer mode, basically. Okay, so we're just going to implement a switch buffer. Okay, so the first thing I need is switch buffer list. View set UI to switch buffer list. Okay, so this is going to look something like this, with probably all of this on there. Just going to want all of that, really. Yikes, this is quite tricky. So, some of the things I've already gotten wrong include, but are not limited to, that has to go separately up here. And so really what I'm going to need is a view list state. The heat's becoming a problem now. I'm going to try opening a window and see if that helps. 1 sec. Okay. Whoops. Get out of here. View start view init switch view init list state. Okay. Okay, so what's happening here is when I call this, I set the command map, I initialize the state, and I call this, but the state is just being stored on this temporary thing. What I really need is I need to be able to create the state and keep it around. Which raises the question, do I have view set variable? Yeah, I do. Do I also have buffer set variable? No, I don't have buffer variables, I just have view variables right now. Okay, fine. Later. But bum 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 so create view variable, got to go back to the default framework. Default framework variables. Shoot. I've made more mistakes. Okay. So this won't even work. What we're really going to need is a text space 256 type situation. Text space. View list state location, and then I want to go to here is passive view list state location, create view variable default dot list state default to 0. Taken Delix asks, can there be at most one list per view? If so, would it just be part of the view storage? So the only problem with that is, yes, there is only one list per view in the sense that there's only one UI per view, but I don't have on the custom side direct access to the view storage, and all this code over here is custom layer code. If I pull up view.ch and I put it in there, and I'm like, oh, view list state, perfect. Let me put this in here. Then what's going to happen when you want to make a different thing that's a table customization from which you will build several table UIs, and you can't do this. You need some way to be able to do storage per view that doesn't go straight into the struct anyway, because you don't have access like I do. So I'm implementing this following the same rules that everyone else will have to implement their custom states with. Now, if I went ahead and did a per view coroutine and a per view arena allocator, I would also do a per view, like, well, I mean, at that point, the point is you would be able to use your arena allocator to allocate whatever information you needed and store that in some kind of easy to access way, at which point you would no longer need anything like this. You would just say, give me the arena for this view, and then say, okay, use that arena to get to the memory I need, right? If the first thing you store in the arena is some root struct that has all the stuff you care about, for instance. The hard part might be getting those different things to interoperate. If you're using it and another library is using it differently and they both want to have their root struct at the base, I'd have to think a little bit about how to make that happen. It might still be useful to have the core do some of the management of brokering between different people trying to use the same resources, but it would be much easier where you wouldn't have to do stuff like making these global arrays of 16. By the way, there's only ever possibly 16 views. You can't have more than that. We have 2, 4, let me see. Boom. Which one am I on right now? Boom, 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 boom. Whoops, not there. How'd that happen? Maybe that one. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 16 views. If I try to split again, oh, whoops, that's not a split. That shrunk the text. There we go. Then we can't get any more views than this. It would just won't, those commands just won't, the APIs just won't let you make the next view. So, the point of all of that is to say, this is the very easy way to do per view storage on the custom side right now, is to just make an array of 16 elements. Whoops. Not sure why the order got all messed up, but anyway. So we make an array of 16 elements, and then what we can do is say when we're initializing the state, what we're going to do, actually what we're going to do is we're going to change this up a bit. This is going to return the state that it initializes in a pointer like that. Doesn't need the partition at all. What it does need is the view summary onto which to view get variable. We're going to need the application links, app view view list state location. Yeah, that's why it's set to 16. 16 is like the number that's like, if that you would have to be doing something well outside of 4coder's intended usage to even reach 16, so it should be plenty. Yeah, sometimes living inside the finiteness of life is more valuable than imagining that you have an infinite scalability solution. Literally all computer problems become trivial if you're not solving the infinite case. With the exception possibly of security. Maybe. I'd have to think about that. Yeah, get variable. Let me take a quick look at it. That's not in the docs yet, so I have to read it directly. Get list view get variable. There it is. So I pass the location and then the value out goes right there. So if we manage to do, okay, you come up here. If we manage to read this, uint 3264t state index equals 0, state index returns state. So if we manage to read the variable, and if the state index is greater than 0, or is equal to 0, then what we're going to do is we're going to start a loop. We'll actually start it out here. Alright, so the idea here is I can just call get, and then get or make list state. And so what it'll do is it'll say, alright, get the state index variable that's already been set on this guy. If that was 0, then we've never assigned a state to this view, so you know, this isn't quite going to work because those variables get cleared if we delete a view and create a new one. We do want a way to release something once it's been taken. I feel like the best way to do this will actually be forget all that, forget literally all of this. Well, hold on, I don't want to forget quite all of that. I needed some of that. Needed this part of it. Forget all that. Forget this. Forget this. Let's try this a different way. I don't like that because that gives me the responsibility of freeing that nonsense. Yeah, I don't want to have to free something when the view gets freed. It's just, ugh. The more things that you have handles to that you need to release is just not a good situation. So, instead, we're going to actually do something really straightforward. I believe view ID is in the range 0 to 15, not 1 to 16. Oh, it is 1 to 16. Okay, so let's just well, I have two options. The good one is not this one. This is the bad one. The one that makes me a bad person for doing it. I'm baking, so what I should have done, to just be clear, is put a -1 right here, as that would indicate that this was a 1 indexed ID and that I was turning it into a 0 based index to get into this array. But instead what I've done is I've made the array and then I made this pointer and I baked the -1 into this. And so now that -1 is baked in, and when we do this addition here, we don't have to do an additional subtraction operation. That's the idea. We do one subtraction during compile time, or possibly at init time of the program, instead of doing 1 minus every time we call this. And it's so slight, but I love thinking about baking things into arrays like this. For some reason, I always enjoy taking advantage of that opportunity. So we're doing that, because plus there's the other matter of I think this is how I've done it everywhere else in the code base where I had to set one of these up. So considering that, I might as well be consistent since it's already like that. And then we can return that state. So now every view will get one, and as long as a view is alive, it keeps the same ID, I'm pretty sure. So, well, yeah, of course it does, otherwise scrolling wouldn't work, which relies on this trick too. Okay, yeah, this is fine, this is good, this is what I should have come up with first. You see how much less code this was once I found the right way to do it? Okay. So, view init list state. Really what I probably want to do is split this up, right? This should probably be separate. Alright, I need a quick quick 5-minuter. Actually, I'm going to end the stream while I'm gone because the computer is running the fan really loud right now and I want to give it a chance to cool off. So the stream will be back in 5 minutes or so.